Think about how many times you've woken up exhausted for school, hitting the snooze button over and over again just to tell yourself 5 more minutes, but somehow 5 minutes turns into 10, and then you're rushing to get ready, half asleep. Maybe you even went to bed at a reasonable time, but you still feel completely drained when your alarm goes off. And by the time you get to school, you're already tired, unmotivated, and just keep trying to get through the day. The truth is that it's not just you, that's most students. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention, in the article Sleep and Health, reviewed in 2024 and accessed May 3rd, 2026, about 7 out of 10 high school students did not get enough sleep on school nights. That means the majority of students are starting their day already sleep deprived, and this isn't just a small inconvenience, it's actually a serious health issue. Teenagers naturally have different sleep cycles than adults. Their bodies are biologically wired to fall asleep later and wake up later. The school day schedule does not reflect that at all. Instead, students are expected to be alert, focused, and ready to learn in the morning, at a time when their bodies are still programmed to be asleep. After researching information from the CDC, Harvard Medical School, and the American Academy of Pediatrics, it becomes clear that early school start times are a major contributor to this problem. It also created a simple visual to show you the three main ways that affect students, which I'll refer to throughout the speech. So I'm going to show you why schools should start later by explaining how sleep affects students, physical health, mental health, and academic performance. First, let's examine how a lack of sleep harms students' physical health. If you look at the visual, the first section highlights physical health. Sleep is one of the most important things your body needs to function properly, but it's often the first thing people cut out of their schedule. While you're asleep, your body is actually doing critical work behind the scenes. It repairs muscle, restores energy, balances hormones, and above all, strengthens your immune system. According to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention about sleep, reviewed in 2024 and accessed May 3rd, 2026, sleep supports a healthy brain function, physical repair, and immune defense. So when you don't get enough sleep, your body doesn't have enough time to complete these essential processes. That's why sleep-deprived students often feel constantly tired and sluggish and low on energy. Even simple tasks can feel harder than they should. Another CDC source, Sleep and Health, reviewed in 2024 and accessed May 3rd, 2026, states that insufficient sleep is linked to long-term health risks like weakened immunity, weight gain, and chronic conditions. So this isn't just about feeling tired for one day. You can have serious long-term effects. Think about how often kids get sick during the school year. A lot of that can be contributed to a lack of sleep. When your immune system is weakened, your body has a harder time fighting off illnesses like colds and infections. Sleep also affects reaction time and coordination. When you're exhausted, you're likely to make mistakes, whether that's in sports, driving, or even just walking around. That increases the risk of accidents and injuries. And when you're tired all the time, you're less likely to stay active. You might skip workouts, sports, practices, or even just everyday movements because you don't have the energy. Over time, that can lead to even more health problems, and all of this shows that sleep is not optional, it's essential. And when school starts too early, they're forcing students into a schedule that doesn't allow their bodies to get the rest they need. Second, sleep is critical for students' mental and emotional well-being. Look at the visual. The second section focuses on the mental health problems. Sleep has a powerful impact on the brain, especially when it comes to emotions and mental health. According to Harvard Medical School, in the article Sleep and Brain Health, What's the Connection?, published in 2023 and accessed May 3rd, 2026, sleep is essential for memory, learning, and emotional stability. That means sleep directly affects how you feel and how you handle everyday situations. When students don't get enough sleep, everything feels harder. Stress feels more intense, small problems feel bigger, You might even get irritated more easily or feel overwhelmed for no clear reason. That's because your brain hasn't had enough time to rest. During sleep, the brain processes emotions and experiences from the day. It also clears out waste that builds up while you're awake. Harvard researchers explain that this process helps improve mental clarity and emotional balance. Without enough sleep, your brain becomes overloaded. That's why sleep-deprived students often struggle with mood swings, frustration, and a difficulty with focusing. It also affects decision making. When you're tired, it's harder to think clearly and make good choices. This can impact everything from schoolwork to relationships. Lack of sleep can also increase a risk of anxiety and depression. And for students who are already dealing with stress from school, sports, jobs, and personal life, not getting enough sleep makes everything worse. It can also affect relationships. You might snap at a friend, feel disconnected, and have less patience with people. Over time, that can damage friendships and social interactions. But when you're well rested, everything changes. You're more calm, more focused, and better able to handle challenges. If school started later, students would have more time to get the sleep they need. And that would lead to better mental health, better emotional control, and a more positive overall mindset. Third, sleep directly affects the academic performance. Finally, the last section of the visual shows how sleep impacts academic performance. This is where the impact of sleep becomes impossible to ignore because it directly affects how well students perform in school. Sleep is essential for memory and learning. When you learn something new, your brain actually processes and stores that information while you sleep. So if you're not getting enough sleep, your brain isn't fully storing what you learned during the day. That means you might study, pay attention, and try your best, but still struggle to remember information later. According to the American Academy of Pediatrics in its policy statement, School Start Times for Adolescents, originally published in 2014 and reaffirmed in 2023, middle school and high school students should start school at 8:30 a.m. later to support students' health, safety, and academic performance. That recommendation is based on research showing that later start times lead to better attendance, improved grades, and increased focus. Think about what happens in class when you're exhausted. You might struggle to stay awake, zone out, or just miss important information. Even if you're physically present, you're not fully engaged. That leads to lower comprehension and weaker performance. But when students are well rested, they're more alert, more focused, and more involved in learning. They can think more clearly, participate in discussions, and retain information more effectively. Teachers also benefit from this because it's easier to teach a class of students who are awake and engaged than one where half of the class is struggling to stay awake. So, something as simple as starting school later can improve not just individual performance, but the overall learning environment. It's not about making school easier, it's about making learning more effective. In conclusion, early school start times are contributing to a serious and widespread problem. Sleep deprivation among students and the lack of sleep affects students in three major ways: their physical health, their mental health, and their academic performance. Research from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, Harvard Medical School, and the American Academy of Pediatrics clearly shows that sleep is essential for overall well-being. This is not just a personal issue, it's a structural problem that schools have the power to change. Schools should start later to give students the opportunity to get the sleep they actually need. Because when students are well rested, they are healthier, happier, and more successful. And if the goal of education is to help students succeed, then school schedules should support that, not work against it. So the next time you're struggling to stay awake for school, remember, it might not just be a lack of discipline, it might be a system that isn't designed for how students actually function. And that's something we have the ability